Brand presentations. What exactly are they? Whereabouts in the client process do they appear? And how do we create a document that competes visually with some of the biggest design agencies in the world? First of all, my name's Jack Watson. I'm a brand designer based in the UK, and 2 years ago I created an Instagram account to help aspiring brand designers who might not have necessarily been to design school like myself. Since then, I've worked with global corporations such as Zara, Formula One and Adobe, and I've also built a following of over 300,000 followers across social media platforms. Last month I made the transition from freelance to a design agency, and I've been documenting the process ever since. In today's video I'm going to show you exactly what I include in my brand presentation, how I build it on Adobe Illustrator, and I'll also showcase a real life example from my new design agency. As a thank you for watching the video, if you liked today's template and would like to purchase it yourself, you can use the code JACK for 20% off your order. This document comes after all the foundational work. Strategy, mood boarding and concept development are complete. At this point, the brand strategy has already been solidified and the brand identity is complete. The client, however, hasn't seen the final identity yet, so this document serves as the first official reveal of the new identity. I've designed this presentation in a specific order to guide the client through a journey. Introduction. We start by setting the stage with what the brand aims to achieve. This establishes the goals, the purpose, and the problem that the client's brand is solving. Brand overview. Before jumping into the visuals, we explain the strategy behind the identity, why this brand exists, and who it serves. This starts to build context for the client, helping them understand how each decision has been made to reflect the brand's mission. Wordmark and logo breakdown. Once the client knows the why behind the brand, we now introduce the most critical element of the visual identity, the logo and the wordmark. But we don't just show the logo or wordmark, we break it down, explaining why each design decision was made. This keeps the client engaged in the meaning behind the design, rather than just judging it by its aesthetic. Colour and typography. With the logo understood, we move on to the colour and type. Here I explain how the choices align with the brand's personality. For example, colours evoke energy and fonts amplify confidence. We reinforce how these elements work together to tell a consistent brand story. Brand in action. Finally, we showcase real-life applications of the brand in action. This includes how it looks on packaging, in advertisements, or on social media. And this is crucial when we present our brand to client, because now they can start to visualize how their brand is going to look in the real world. The document's designed to ensure a smooth, impactful brand reveal. It not only shows the new identity, but it also guides the client through every decision, showing the rationale behind the design. The benefit of this is that this is going to build trust, minimize pushbacks, and also reduce unnecessary revisions. So how do we build this thing? Well, we could build this in InDesign, and if you're familiar with the software, then I'd definitely recommend it. However, I'm going to be creating this in Adobe Illustrator since I have all the shortcuts down to a T. So let's get started. First, we're going to set up 30 artboards, 1920 by 1080. So we'll go to File, New, and then change the width to 1920, height to 1080p. Make sure the orientation is on landscape, and we're going to change the amount of artboards to 30. Next, we want to create a grid. So to do that, we need to create a rectangle the same size of our artboard, which is going to be 1920 by 1080. We want to make sure we remove the fill, and then heading over to transform, we want to take away 120 from the top and the bottom. So ideally, we don't want anything to go outside of this range. Now by pressing Command C, Command F, we're going to duplicate this in place. And if we head to Object, Path, Split into Grid, we can create 6 rows with a 30 pixel gutter, Command and G to group those. And with the other rectangle, we can go to Object, Path, Split into Grid, and we can create 12 columns with a 30 pixel gutter. So now if we group these together and press Command C, by clicking on the desired artboard and pressing Command F, we can supposedly paste these in place. But if you don't want to do that, then we can align them to the center and also align them to the middle of the artboard, and we will copy and paste that across to every artboard. There we go, it's working now. We'll add an additional one to the side just in case we need it later on. And now if we select all of our artboards and click Command 5, this is going to convert it into a guide. And by pressing Command semicolon, we can hide these or we can show them. If this is already taking too long and you need a template quick, then you can skip to the time code that's on the screen now, and you can use the code JACK for 20% off the following template. So first of all, we need to add elements that are going to be on every single page. So I'm going to start with my body copy font, which is going to be Satoshi, and we'll stick to 12 points as the font size. I'm going to put the agency name in the top left corner, the top left corner being the top left corner of the grids. I'm going to add our logos to the top right of the document. I'm going to put a slightly larger word mark at the bottom left. And I'm also going to duplicate this text to the bottom right and change that into our page number, which is going to be 01. Let's make sure this is aligning to the right side. As a rule of thumb, to determine my font sizes, I like to start with the smallest font in the document, which in this case is 12 points. And then to determine the rest of them, I simply multiply them by 1.618 each time, which we can do in this box here. And this number is the golden ratio. And if we keep multiplying it by 1.618, we can have a range of font sizes to choose from for our document. There's two fonts that I'm going to be using. This is the secondary type. So for the primary type, I'm going to be using a font called Museo Moderno, I believe. Here we go. And then I also want to make sure the color palette's to hand as well. So I'm just going to paste these 3 images here, which we can use for the color palette. And now we can create the cover page. So I think I'm going to change the text to this beige color, and we're going to create a black background for this as the template. So simply increasing it until it goes to 1080 by 1920. If we want to be extra precise, we can change the numbers up here, and then we just make sure to align that to the center. Otherwise, when you export it, you might have a thin white line at the top. And then send this to back, I press Command Shift and open bracket. Using the primary type, I'm going to type brand presentation, and as a guide for spacing, I'm going to create a square this big, and we're going to use that as a guide and bring that here. And we're going to have a subheading as well, which is going to say initial brand identity. Put the date on there as well using the same font sizes. And finally, we add some small text down here as well. So that's looking good. This is now going to be the cover of our page, and it's most likely going to be repeated every time we start a new section. Next, we want an introduction page, and I don't want this to have a black background, so we're going to copy these smaller elements across, and we're going to change these to black. We'll go for the primary color for the second page. And for the text, we're going to put welcome to the Nonstop brand presentation. This presentation is designed to help bring the Nonstop brand to life. Obviously, you'd input your client's brand name here. Going to copy these smaller elements over again. And then using the same font size as the brand presentation, we're going to change this to say contents. This font has different variants, so I need to change these really quick. We're going to keep this aligned in the same place as the front. And as you can see, the first 4 pages recap the strategy. The next 7 pages break down the logo and word mark. The following 5 pages dive into the use of color, followed by 4 pages of type. And finally, the remaining pages are showcasing the brand in action through the use of mockups. So in line with the contents, let's copy over this cover page for the Nonstop brand by simply highlighting the first page, copying it with Command C and pasting it with Command F. Now we're going to change this slightly to make it more suitable. I'm liking the look of that. The next page, I'm going to copy the introduction over and make it white, but I'm also going to add a small title above it as well. Again, making sure that the text is consistent. We've divided this by 1.618, and the goal is summarizing what we aim to achieve with the brand identity. The next page is going to be summarizing the strategy, which I've narrowed down to 6 headings. If you'd like to read through these, then you can pause the video right now. And for the final page in section 1, I like to reveal a preview of the identity. Now to create this split grid effect, I'll show you how to do that. You want to start by creating a rectangle in the desired space. For this, I have brought the rectangle up to this line here. Next, you want to go to Object, Path, Split into Grid, and we're going to split it into 2 rows and 3 columns. And to make the uneven effects like I just did, then we just go to the Shape Builder tool, which is located over here, and we just drag and drop over where we'd like to merge the cells. And if you sat there wondering how do we create a clipping mask effect using these rectangles, if you wait around to the end, I'll show you all the streamlined ways that you can use this template to your advantage. Now for the cover photos for the rest of them, I know exactly where they're going to place, so I'm just going to copy this style over and I'm going to change them to match the contents. For the word mark, we're going to use this as a base template by copy and pasting it over. And we've changed the title to our word mark, and I've also put an explanation in here. Copying that over again to the next slide, but this time with a bit of a twist. We've removed the white box on the left hand side, got rid of the text, and instead I've added these arrows which point to the word mark, which will ultimately explain the decision. Now if you do decide to download this template and you go to Window, Layers, you'll be able to click this toggle right here and see exactly what I've done for a real brand identity client. Using the prior template, we're going to paste it to the next slide, this time adding word mark variations and making sure we include the clear space. And now we're going to repeat the first 2 slides here, but this time we're going to do it for the logo. After these 2, we're going to do a logo in action, which is going to be the same layout as the visual overview, so we're going to copy in that and we're going to paste it down here. And as you can see, I've changed the text here to say logo in action, with also a brief summary as well. Okay, so we're officially halfway. Hopefully you're still awake because now we're about to build the color slides, which is slightly different. But first, let me tell you about Framer. If you haven't heard of Framer before, it's a popular no-code web development tool. With a similar interface to Figma, the advantage is that you can directly publish your designs as a website without the need of code. As you can see, taking a look at the software, the interface is very similar to Figma, and I'm currently working on developing my own brand guideline hosted on Framer. Now the goal is to create a template for you guys to enable live updates, easy access, and interactive features, such as being able to download the logo files, copy the hex codes across with ease, and download fonts without having to go through a separate file every time. Now, if you've been watching my series, you'll know that I'm currently working on a few different client projects for my new agency Nonstop, and I'll be using Framer to create the website for the Save Our Species Alliance brand identity. But if you want to get started today with Framer and you'd like 35% off your first 3 months, make sure to use the code Jack. Okay, so for the color section, it really depends on how many colors we've got in our color palette, but I'm going to use this as an initial guide. Okay, so this is what we've come up with, and I've used the split into grid for this. So it was initially this one big rectangle like this. And by going to Object, Path, Split into Grid, I divided it into multiple rows and 3 columns, and then using the Shape Builder tool, I merged some of them together to create this nice effect. Now the space in between these elements here is simply by creating a rectangle and dragging it in between our guide, which tended to be about 30 pixels wide, which makes sense because that's what we did for the gutter. And I've made sure to maintain that in between the bottom of the text and the bottom of the rectangle. I've made sure to include the hex code, the RGB, and the CMYK. Now I've got a bit of text on the left just to explain the choices behind the colour. However, if your brand has packaging, then you're going to need one of these, a Pantone colour. So this page is simply just to get a Pantone matching as close to the colour palette that you've selected. And the page after is just to show it in action with any mock-ups you might have already created. Wrapping things up, we want a packaging in action. So we're going to copy over the logo in action page and just change the title. And if you do download my template, you'll see that the descriptions are set up, ready for you to just simply change out the brackets. Okay, so jumping into the type, it depends on how many types you've actually got involved in your brand identity. For me, I've just got the 2, so let's create a quick template for this. So here you can see we've got primary type, and explain it on the left. And then we've got the primary typeface, which is Moderno Museo. And for the secondary font, we have Satoshi, so we're going to copy this across and simply just change the font types. If you stick around to the end, I'll show you exactly how you can change this in just a few clicks. And to wrap off the type, I also like to include a type in use. So I'm going to head over to my digital use template. And this is a template that I'll be releasing in the next couple of weeks. It's got loads of different social media examples, which you can simply just use a clipping mask behind there. Change anything necessary. This took absolutely ages to create. So let me know if you would like this template. And I'm happy with that as our template. And this is what it's turned out like. This is a real life example from a real brand identity project, so you can see exactly how it could be used. And if you do download the template, you'll also have access to this entire PDF. And now to wrap this off, we're just going to split this into a 4 image grid, and we're going to copy and paste that across the remaining 5 slides, which is simply going to be the brand in action. If we take a look at the real presentation for the client, we can see that this is filled with many different mockups. So this is the final template that's going to be available on my website. Now I'm going to show you some shortcuts to use to save you time when editing it. So the first one we've already mentioned, which is Command semicolon to view or hide guides. But what if we want to change the primary font? Now, instead of going through each slide, we can simply head over to Type, find and replace font. And you can see we've got a list of the fonts used here. We know our primary font is Museo Moderno, and we can change this if we would like to Helvetica Bold. We make sure to change the Museo Moderno Bold as well. Change that to Helvetica. And as you can see, all of the fonts have changed just like that in a click of a button. Okay, so the next issue that we might face is having to update the colors of the document every single time. Now there's a way to speed this up, and what I like to do is highlight the entire document, go to Help and type in Recolor, click Recolor Artwork. And now if we change these to be the exact colors, we can simply put our desired hex codes in here, or alternatively, we can change them across the scale. Another issue we could run into is that on our document, we could run into the risk of putting a different client's name on our document, especially if we're constantly updating the same document to match a new brand identity. So a way that we can avoid this is by simply going to Edit, Find and Replace. And if we type in the text that we'd like to replace and click Find, it's going to find it across all of the different touch points. And we can simply change them all at once by typing in Replace With and click Replace All. As you can see, 8 changes were made. And finally, it's all well and good having these boxes here. However, how do we create them into a clipping mask? And the quickest way to do this is by simply bringing our picture into Adobe Illustrator, reducing the size to make sure it covers the space of the rectangle. And now send this to the back by clicking Command Open Bracket, Command Shift Open Bracket, Make sure it's selected, hold shift and click the area that you'd like to create a clipping mask with and click Command and 7. Now we just delete the text and there we go. So hopefully this video helps clear up any questions that you might have had around brand presentations and the technical challenges that we might face building them. Next week, I'm going to be breaking down my unique framework to create strong strategies for my clients, which determines the direction of not only the branding, but also the decisions of the business as well. See you next time.